Welcome back to the Snatch Chat podcast. This is episode 6. It is again another Q&A. So we've got a good bunch of different questions, some on sort of like mindset, goal setting, a few on sort of like the technicalities of sort of weightlifting, and then there's a few different ones in there. Okay, so let's get ourselves started. So first question, what should lifters actually review last year before setting new goals? Okay, so whether that's PBs, consistency, technique, comps, injuries, mindset, etc. So the first thing that you've got to do before setting goals for the year ahead is actually reflecting on the previous year. Thinking about things like what went well, what didn't go so well, what hurdles you faced, and how you approach those hurdles. Okay, and if you were going to have that same hurdle again this year, what would you do anything different? Okay, this then sort of allows you to create more of a bulletproof system moving forwards. So once you've reflected, you've got a bunch of things that you did well. Okay, they're the things that you want to sort of keep. Things that you didn't do so well. Okay, and what you did to overcome that, or what didn't you do? And then you're going to create areas that you're going to do to prevent that from happening again. Once you've got that, that is the bulletproof plan. You're then going to base your goals off that reflection. So it might well be that you want to add 10 kilos onto your snatch, 15 kilos onto your clean and jerk, whatever they may be, whatever numbers they are. But you can look at the year ahead and go, okay, so I know that I don't train very well over Christmas. Okay, so I need to make sure that I am basically going to wrap up training at the start of December to allow me to have that month of December as a bit of like as a ride into the sort of the new cycle. That way then you've got your 1 rep max in where you know consistency still stays high. It allows you to take your foot off the gas and then enjoy December. Okay, if you've got holidays coming up, you plan to train but you didn't actually get training in, you might look at the week when you're on holiday as having that as a deload week. Okay, just so then before you go and once you're back, you can have those as proper blocks of work and yet not having that inconsistent break when you expected to sort of train. Okay, and then that's when you can start to go, okay, so we're going to have 12, we've got a good 12-week block here before I can sort of hit a max. This is when we're going on holiday, so we'll have a nice starting to that will be deload 1, so on and so on. Okay, that is how I would approach setting goals for the new year. Okay, question 2. What's one habit outside the gym that would improve most lifters' totals more than extra sets or longer sessions? All right, and I suppose this really gets mixed into the same sort of things, but the things that you're going to look at here really is sleep, making sure that you're getting adequate sleep on an evening, 7+ hours. Nutrition is good, making sure that you've got 3 good meals, maybe some snacks in there as well, and you are doing a good amount of mobility work before your sessions within your warm-up, say 10 to 15 minutes. If I had to choose one of those, or do I go for, would I say sleep or nutrition? I would go out there and say sleep would be one habit that you'd sort of really hone in on, because I think if you get your sleep, if you don't sleep, you end up starting to reach for the shit foods. Your motivation drops. Your consistency then is going to fall off training. If you get a decent amount of sleep in, your motivation will stay relatively higher. Okay, so you start to enjoy your training, but there's a higher chance that you're going to pick out the good foods. A lot of times is that you reach for shit foods when you feel shit inside, and that's probably mainly down to poor sleep. So I would go out there and say sleep would be the priority there. Question 3. What's your favorite lift and why? Snatch or clean and jerk? I'm not going to be sitting on the fence here. Snatch wins hands down. I enjoy clean and jerk. I think there's more of a mental fight going into a clean and jerk than there is for a snatch for me. The one thing that I really enjoy from weightlifting that I didn't really get anywhere else is that satisfaction of doing something that if you do it, awesome. If you don't, it could go wrong. Like it could sort of drop a bar on your back on a snatch. It's going to hurt, isn't it? There's like that sort of, I suppose it really brings out the fight and flight in me. And I think I really enjoy that the most. Heavy cleans, you know it's going to be a real task to sort of stand it up. You've done all this hard work, you stood it up, you failed the jerk. It's really flipping like annoying. Where the snatch is just that one movement, it really does bring that sort of fight and flight out of me. But I think because there's such a fine margin of between success and failure in a lift, as soon as you hit that absolute rep and it's absolutely plumb, there's such a good feeling that you get from like a really, really good snatch. So yeah, 100% snatch. Question 4. What's the most common technical issue you see in the snatch right now? And how would you start fixing it? Okay, so biggest one, I actually did a post on this on Instagram last week. And that's about the early arm bend in the snatch. But go deeper than that. Early arm bend is because people are trying to pull the bar overhead. Okay. Now, this isn't an upper body movement. If we think of the body, the strongest muscles in the body are the legs. We want the legs to do all of the work. So the biggest thing here, we've got to try and flip the switch to treating weightlifting movements as a vertical jump. The higher you jump, the higher the bar travels, the more time you've got to receive that bar. What I don't want to do is create tension in my arms where I'm trying to take that bar overhead. I can't utilize my legs. You're not going to get that same amount of height on the bar. Okay. So the common issue here is people trying to pull that bar over the head to get it into that end position where all they need to try and do is utilize that jump. Push through the floor, jump as high as you can. The bar travels higher. You get more time to get underneath it. So think of the movement as a jump. Get really good at high hang snatches. When you're really good at a high hang snatch, progress that into a hang snatch and try and get that same movement and fluidity that you got in the high hang snatch. Another movement that'd be really, really beneficial here is like a block snatch, starting in that static position and really trying to think about creating speed and power from the get-go. Okay, I reckon that is probably the biggest issue out there for the snatch. People are trying to take the weight overhead rather than utilizing the strength that they've got in the lower body. Question 5. How do you decide when an athlete needs more strength versus more technical work? I had a similar question to this the other day. I think strength and technique, they both work hand in hand. Okay, you will have an overarching goal. Okay, or you should have an overarching goal. You're not trying to work on two individual things here. You might find out that by working this one area, you're killing two birds with one stone, but you're going to have more of a focus. So the focus might well be, actually, if we bring it back to the early arm pull, we're pulling that bar overhead. Okay, the technical part of this goal here is working the high hang snatch, making sure we're utilizing our legs before we then progress into a hang or even a block snatch. Okay, that's the technical aspect of that goal. The strength side or the strength and power side of that goal is that we want to get stronger legs. We want to get used to pushing through the floor. So we might start to look at doing or having that program, heavy squats, adding some jumps into there. So we're improving our strength and our power as at the same time as working this technical aspect of long arms, letting the legs do the work. Okay. Someone who is further along the line, they might have less of a technical focus, but now they are, what's the word? What shall I say here? they are lacking strength in the overhead position of the snatch. They get under the bar every single time. There's always that arm bend. Okay, they're finding that there is that arm bend. Now, we've identified that is probably more of a strength issue than it is technical. Okay, there's certain things that we can work on in our technique. We're going to start to look at power snatches, holding the bottom of our snatches, our standard snatches. So we've got trying to drive harder to the floor to create more height on the bar, but we've also got getting comfortable at holding that bottom position, staying locked out. But the strength side of it, the biggest focus of this program is going to be creating a strong, stable lockout. Having in movements such as a snatch grip push press, maybe even standard push presses. Building the strength in that overhead position is priority within the goal. Other aspects, power snatches, pausing in the bottom position, are the technical aspects that marry up with that strength goal. Okay, so they'll always sort of be hand in hand. One has a higher emphasis compared to the other, but they sort of go together. Okay. Next question. How do you decide? No, that's that question. Next question. What's a lifting myth you wish would disappear in the new year? Oh, a lifting myth. What is a lifting myth? Here's one, actually, and I don't think this is spoken about enough. Everyone should, in weightlifting, everybody should high bar back squat, because that is the most specific thing to the weightlifting movements. I call bullshit. Personally, I want to see that person get strong in the squat, okay? Because the most specific thing here, the thing that's going to carry over more is your leg strength, okay? So if that means that an athlete has to low bar back squat to get good depth in that bottom position, because not everybody can high bar back squat. If that means that that person gets a better squat depth and can load that bar up heavier, that is going to carry over more than that person always doing high bar and not getting that depth, okay? Because they're getting strong in this top portion of the movement, then they can't get used to that bottom range of the lift, okay? So high bar back squat, low bar back squat, whatever works for you should be the technique, because the thing that's going to carry over here is the leg strength, okay? Now, I remember listening to a podcast years ago, I can't even remember which podcast it was, where they were basically saying that all weightlifters should high bar back squat because it creates this vertical torso that is needed for the snatch and clean, okay? Yeah, okay, it does, but if this person has better strength in a standard, in a low bar squat, surely that is better than putting him into a position that is not testing the end range, which is needed for, you know, taking maximal loads overhead, getting into those deeper ranges. That's surely better than them doing high bar, staying high and keeping the weight light because they can't load it up. That's how I would look at that one. Next question. Is it better to train heavier with poor technique or lighter with perfect reps? Where's the balance? I always would say lighter with perfect reps. Just going heavier and letting your technique be the thing that starts to break down is only going to create a plateau further on down the line. Okay, nail the technique, nail the basics of the movements, and then that will start to progress forwards. I don't understand why anyone would want to start training heavier with poor technique, because it is literally going to just create them to halt further down the line. That's how I would see it. How important is video analysis for improving Olympic lifts, and what should lifters actually be looking for? So video analysis is really good. You're going to start to see the areas that you need to work on with your movement. Now, rather than trying to think about multiple areas that you're going to fix, the athlete wants to just hone in on that one area, okay? It might well be, for argument's sake, we're coming up onto our toes. So in the snatch, I'm coming up onto my toes, the bar is mid-thigh, okay? Which means that I'm not going to be as powerful in that full position. So the only thing that I'm going to look for here is trying to stay flat-footed for as long as possible until that bar reaches my hip crease. That is the area I'm going to work on. I'm going to keep on videoing my movements until I see that that actually starts to happen. If you don't film the lifts, you don't know when that's going to happen. You might feel it, but you're going to get more of a visual understanding of what is happening and potentially why it's happening and what you can fix, or your coach can have a look at it and see what you can fix, rather than just trying to wait for them to be in that session or waiting for you to feel something that's off. And 9 times out of 10, you won't. What's one cue you give the most that almost instantly improves most people's lifts? I sort of mentioned it previously, but it's treating the movement as a snatch. Don't treat everything as a snatch. Treating the movement as a vertical jump. In your snatch, bar reaches hips, vertical jump. Jump high, relax those arms, stamp into that bottom position. Clean. Arms stay nice and long. As soon as that bar reaches mid-thigh, treat the lift like a vertical jump. Jump high, stamp hard. Split jerk. Dip, jump high, and before you attack that split. Everything is a vertical jump. Once you start to think about using the legs and not taking the bar with your arms to the end position of the snatch, end position for the clean, and even taking the bar overhead into the split, and start utilizing the legs and giving yourself more time, the movement becomes so much more fluid and it starts to click really, really fast. That is the biggest cue I think that I give out all the time. I'd probably say jump higher 5-10 times every single day. Like, yeah, it's the best cue. How long does it really take to make noticeable technical changes in the snatch or clean? If we're looking at a program, you're going to probably find within the first 5 weeks or 5 to 6 weeks of a program, you're working at lighter percentages to work on a technical change. Okay, you're going to start to see that improve within that first 6 weeks. I wouldn't say that issue is solid and gone away. The first 6 weeks, you've almost just created the foundations of overcoming that technical change. From there then, so that block, that 5 to 6 week block, is going to work up to about 75, potentially maybe knocking on the door of 80%. But to really solidify that technical change, it's going to be within that next block of work. And again, that block of work is probably going to be sort of another 5 to 6 weeks, where you're going to look to maintain the technique that you've got at higher percentages, working up to sort of 85, 87% in my eyes. So to make sure that the technical, so a note, the question is, how long does it really take to make noticeable technical changes? It's probably 6 weeks. To solidify that and make sure you've overcome it, it's probably 12 weeks. You've got those 2 phases where you're fixing the problem, exposing the problem to heavier weights, and solidifying that change. So 6 weeks to make noticeable differences, further 6 weeks to solidify and make sure it doesn't come back. And then the final question, if you could only train one lift or exercise for the rest of your life, what are you picking and why? Back squat. All day long, back squat. As much as I love Olympic lifting, there's poor squats. They're horrible, slightly enjoyable. You can go heavy on a squat and that brings out, you've got a really big weight on your back. There's no sort of better feeling. You've got volume squats. You can really work on sort of like building muscle, getting your legs to feel that burn. And at the end of the day, you can never have too big of a leg. Like, just build as much muscle in that lower body is such a fantastic thing. And I think, back squats all day long. Okay, so that is the end of episode 6. Thank you very much for joining the Q&A. Hopefully you've sort of taken a few things out of there, especially around goal setting and reflection. Now, in terms of goal setting and reflection, I've actually got the OPTILIFT blueprint. Now, this is what I've used with all of my athletes to reflect on the previous year and create the goals for the next 12 months. Now, if you actually want to get your free copy of that, I've actually attached it into the description below. You'll be able to download it and actually use that OPTILIFT blueprint to actually solidify your goal setting moving forwards. And hopefully those questions on the technique have sort of, or the technique analysis and things to sort of look out for in your training and why you should actually video are things that then you can actually execute in your training. Hopefully you found it useful. Make sure, if you haven't already, click subscribe, and I'll see you in episode 7.